You didn't think she was going to go quietly, did you? Sarah Boone, the suitcase murderess. Yes, the person that was convicted of murdering George Torres by not letting him out of a suitcase after playing hide and seek. Yes. So, what was her sentence? Stay tuned. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. You didn't think you were going to hear from me again. Oh, yeah. New trial starts today, so you don't want to miss that. The person that's on trial, the defendant in the new trial, is a medical examiner. What? Yeah. Anyway, more on that in another video later. We're here to talk about the sentencing of Ms. Sarah Boone. Yes, the one that went through 9 attorneys, 8 attorney landed on the 9th, and pretty darn good. He's a pretty good attorney. She ended up with a decent attorney. I will say that. So we are here at a sentencing. Once again, the defense is asking for a downward departure from the maximum of life in prison, which is 30 years. So she was convicted of putting her, well, she didn't put him in the suitcase. He put himself in the suitcase when they were drunk and playing hide and seek. She went upstairs to hide in the shower. He proceeded to get into a suitcase. When she came down, he was in it, zipped him up in it. They're laughing, yucking it up. Then we have a videotape that comes out that shows her taunting him in the suitcase. Yep. Now, there was some question about whether she suffered from PTSD as a result of his domestic abuse, the battered woman syndrome. She's not a very sympathetic witness or person, defendant, whatever you want to call her. She just doesn't garner a lot of sympathy. She doesn't show a lot of remorse for what happened. And she's going to speak at this sentencing. Anyway, long story short, she, after she zips him up in the suitcase and taunts him for a little while, she goes back upstairs, falls asleep, sleeps for 11 hours, comes back down the next morning about noonish, and finds out that he didn't survive in that suitcase. Ran out of oxygen. So, at the sentencing hearing, George Torres' mother spoke, and I'm not going to play the clips of, just suffice it to say, she said, my son wasn't perfect, but he was a very good son. So it has impacted her as far as a mother-son relationship. Then Victoria Torres, his sister, there's 2 Victoria Torreses. Victoria Torres, his sister, spoke, and she's a little bit harsher than Mama. She said he deserves to rot in jail. That he turned her family's lives, that she turned, why did I say he? She turned her family's lives upside down. Then Victoria Torres, his daughter, spoke on behalf of his 3 children. And I can't read my own writing. She said that, his was a life that was dimmed on earth. And that, they miss him very much. She says, there isn't a night that she doesn't go by, that she doesn't wake up with nightmares. She was very close to her dad, which is odd because, like, when he would call them, they didn't want to talk to him. Okay. I don't know what that was about. So then Sarah, I guess Sarah's defense team got on the phone and was trying to find people. And they found a bunch of jail people. Because she's been in jail for 4.5 years, not prison, jail, county jail, 4.5 years at the Orange County Jail in Orlando. So the chaplain of the jail says she's known her for 4 years. She said that Sarah is very religious now, that she's very sincere in her efforts to change her life. She's very kind. She's very helpful. As new people come in, she has to show them where Jesus is in the prison, and she helps. So, because I always say, if you want to find Jesus, that's where he is, in jail and in the prison. So Sarah found him. Then we have another cellmate that came up to testify. She'd known him for 4 years. She says, listen, Judge, mistakes happen. Sarah was very helpful. That was basically her testimony. Then we get another person that met her in jail, knew her for 3 months, and said she has a very good character, a very good heart. Then we get another jail friend that just knew her a few months. But this woman, well, maybe more than a few months, this woman was very well spoken and very sincere. This particular woman appeared by Zoom. She says, I'm appearing by Zoom because I am basically dying of kidney disease. My kidneys have failed. I'm on dialysis. I can't get around a lot. And Sarah actually offered to donate her kidney to this woman. Unfortunately, they were not a match. But she wanted to say, Sarah's not a comic book character or a fictional character. She's a real person, And everyone out there is basically on social media has villainized this woman. Well, and I won't say that that's social media's fault. I just report what I'm seeing. I'm not going to villainize anybody, but you let your boyfriend die in a suitcase. Hello? Anyway, then she had a doctor take the stand that testified that she has a mental disease or defect. She's suffering from PTSD as a result of intimate partner violence, that she suffered from the early death of her father in high school. Apparently, when she came to the hospital and to visit her dad and went in the room, there were students practicing CPR on her father. He had already passed away. They were practicing CPR. What? I've never heard of such a thing. Anyway, that's what she reported to the doctor, because all this is coming from Sarah. And Sarah, we're going to come to find out, is a writer. This woman can write. And very well, I might add. She'd do well to sit in that prison and just write books. She's fascinating. She's a very good writer. So, as you'll see when you hear her statement. So she requires counseling and antidepressant treatment. She has complex mental health issues, including substance abuse. So she's probably been clean now for 4.5 years as far as I know. I mean, I don't know. Can they get alcohol in jail? Probably. I mean, who knows? Yeah. So based on this, the defense was asking for a downward departure. She tested on the score sheet. Like I said, Florida uses a score sheet. 246 months, I believe it. Whatever it was, it came out to 20.5 years in prison. And her attorney was asking the judge to depart from that downward. So, well, I want you to hear what Sarah had to say, because she was her final witness was herself. Take a listen to what she has to say.
Ms. Boone, you can be seated. You've been previously sworn. You may inquire, sir.
Just state your name again.
Sarah Boone.
Now, this is unlike a trial, so you're allowed to speak in a narrative form, as well as I understand you have taken some notes or written a letter that you want to read from, and then you want to speak to the court after that.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and get started?
This is actually an edited version of. I had a lot to say. I've had a lot of time to think about things, and I didn't really know how to put it on paper. And I didn't know how much I could say or how little I should say. So what I have here is, like I said, an edited version. But I would like to read the more important parts that I feel that everyone should know that wasn't said in my actual trial. And on top of what I have on paper, this is just the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So I wanted to read this, and then if I may, I would like to address everyone in my apology on top of my statement.
You may proceed, ma'am.
Kintu sukuroi is a kind of Japanese ceramic style which means to repair with gold. In this tradition, when a ceramic piece breaks, an artisan will fuse the pieces back together again using liquid gold or gold dust lacquer. So rather than being covered up, the breaks become more obvious and a brilliant new piece of art emerges from the brokenness. It embraces flaws, weakness, and imperfections, and also teaches the essence of resilience. Every crack in a ceramic piece is a part of its history, and each piece becomes more beautiful because it has been broken. This is the wisdom of Kintu sukuroi. In my wisdom and with all of my repairs, then, now, and ongoing, God is, has been, and will always be my artisan. All of my gold is forgiveness. This has held me together, made me shine brighter, and overcome the damage caused by George Torres, the Torres family, the justice system, Orange County Corrections Department, social media, scoundrel detectives, infamy, defamation, ongoing constitutional rights violations, second-degree murder, forced into being pro se. Just as gold is very precious, forgiveness is invaluable. Forgiveness is not an attempt to change or forget who, what, or how you've lived through to be so gold, but an act of grace, humility, and considerable self-compassion to be set free from sorrow. Withholding forgiveness denies your brilliance and adds even greater grief and deeper heartache, irreparable cracks on top of the already that no one deserves, no matter the pain or disappointment, untruths or injustice. It doesn't matter, as the more broken you are, even though now different than before, you've become more outstanding and more extraordinary. Above all, when you let go of blame, misunderstandings, excuses, give up your anger and cease from resentment, this is forgiven. And when you forgive, you heal. And when you heal, you move forward. My goal begins with George Torres, and every time he slapped me, kicked, punched, spit on, raped, stabbed, choked, laughed at, pushed, pulled, dragged, whipped, tripped, stole from, lied, terrorized, threatened, humiliated, forced, degraded, made me cry. Every time he tried to end me, defeat, or destroy. I forgive George for beating me senseless, for trying to sleep because I had to go to work or my son's field trip the next day, for ruining my deceased family's heirlooms, traditions, and keepsakes, my son's furniture, destroying the television we watched together, for wrecking our townhome by breaking windows, punching holes in the walls and doors, ramming his entire body into glass doors, kicking in my front and back door over and over and over, for breaking or removing the locks from all of the doors and sometimes the knobs altogether, so I had nowhere to feel safe, including the sacred space of my son's room where he beat me bloody on his bed. For terrorizing and threatening my blind and deaf dogs by leaving the gate open I built to keep them safe, telling me he hoped I'd find their bloated dead body in the pond or scrape their remains off of the pavement, for kicking them off of the bed and throwing across the room because they were trying to protect me, for threatening to make me unrecognizable to my son by breaking all of the bones in my face, like his brother Moses did to him after he kept seeing all of the bruises from George beating me, like all of the times their father beat their mother, for all of the drunken rages and fist fights with so many neighbors when wandering into their apartments during hunting expeditions after I had escaped, for drowning me in liquor and wine because I didn't want to drink, causing me to urinate on myself, then butting the end of the bottle in my face, giving me 2 black eyes and a bloody nose, for making me experience what it is to be sodomized, threatening to kill my friends and the neighbors when they checked on me to make sure I was alive and in one piece, for threatening to burn down our townhome and set my car on fire because I got a job, for holding me hostage on weekends my son was supposed to come over by keeping my keys around his neck, my phone in his crotch, and a butcher knife stuck in the middle of the table as a warning not to ask anything or try to leave, for stabbing me in the leg and not letting me call 911 for an ambulance or seek help, where I nearly bled to death until I concocted a lie to save him from being arrested, for destroying my phone with a hammer because my son called, for me experiencing ever being arrested and after today, prison, for beating me almost blind, crushing my occipital lobe, for having me experience what it means to see stars like in the cartoons where a character has a tall lump on their head. I had that too, and many times, for dragging me downstairs by my hair in the middle of the night just to sit next to him, for taking my car driving drunk with my debit card to buy more alcohol while I slept, even after I kindly explained the importance of my car to take my son to school foremost, me to work, and he to his batterers intervention classes and probation officer meetings, where I would be forced to sit for hours in the parking lot waiting for him, for causing me so much trauma and pain mentally, physically, emotionally, I had to be hospitalized more than once, for destroying my reputation and integrity, for my M for murderer scarlet letter, not letting me feel safe to live, talk to other people, spend time with my son, have a job, friendships, simply go to the bathroom with the door closed, or go to sleep soundly or comfortably. I forgive George for lying, for him trying in so many ways, so many times, to end me with his terrifying love. I also forgive the Torres family, his mother and father foremost, also his 2 ex-wives and daughters, all for knowing who George was capable of and has done in the past, his history of violence and where he learned it, then to keep turning a blind eye when I would ask for help. All of his siblings, including Pharrell Torres, who is now on his way to prison for stabbing the mother of their baby in the side of her head. For everyone who knew what George was doing to me, sometimes how and when, but allowed and enabled. I forgive them for caring too late. I hope they all ask themselves while quiet and comfortable in bed at night the uneasy question, what could I have done to stop this from happening to both of them? And after all the time Sarah tried to, by asking for help from all of us and so many times. Another great contributor of my gold is social media, with its greed, insensitivity, deception, obvious exploitation, and advantageous gain from my criminal case as a whole, and for sentencing me by anticipation as a result of ignorance and hate, conjured and fabricated by the organized crime that is social media, which condemned me in the court of global public opinion since the beginning. My family law case is the new prey waiting to be picked apart and pillaged from me being made infamous by social media in my criminal case. It simply seems I cannot forgive and be forgiven and move forward. Social media has made me a pariah. It has caused great oppression and undeniable disadvantages, especially by broadcasting and manipulating my cases online. In my criminal case, as a result, my opportunities to be given a fair, proper, and uninfluenced, successful conclusion was heavily depleted and poisoned. I forgive them. Also, all of the media tycoons for not having a life of their own, trying so desperately to make themselves seem so right by making me appear so wrong. Forgiveness for prejudgment, ridiculous theatrics, lies, making and taking blood money from my and others' misfortunes, accidents, and catastrophes. It's all over their hands and their keyboards. And even after all that's been said and done, theorized, hypothesized, scrutinized, and blasphemed in my case, still no one knows me. In the end, I forgive myself for not choosing my life sooner, for not being more brave, vigilant, bolder, and outspoken, stronger, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, for being hopeless, desperate, simple-minded, weak, and inexperienced. I forgive myself for not realizing I was enduring a life of domestic violence and that the vicious cycle of never ends. I had nothing to compare to. I've never been hit by a man ever before in my life. I was raised hitting a woman was wrong and should never happen. No excuse. I forgive myself for not escaping permanently, for not fighting back sooner to save myself, my son, my dogs, home and car. Having 20/20 hindsight, thinking of everything I could have done differently or better to avoid the outcome. I think about this every day since. Also, of all the good days we had together, for him at least, while I was constantly in hyperdrive, high alert, and paranoid, making sure I did everything right all the time. If not, the great possibility I would be ended as George threatened me with so many times before. I forgive myself for falling in love with a monster, and no matter how grotesque he may become, I still loved him, hoped, and forgave. I tried breaking the spell so he wouldn't be a monster anymore. I saw who he was inside. George made me then, now, and always love him for all of his cracks also. We made each other our own brilliant pieces of art from the cracks and repairs. Unfortunately, not all cracks can be. In all of my forgiveness, George is my greatest lesson and will forever be a part of me. I think of him every day and still speak to him when alone on the rec yard. I ask his forgiveness and that he looks for me at the gates of heaven so I can tell him how sorry I am endlessly and that I never stopped loving him in all of it and still. When I first came to jail, I put my mat under my bed and cried all day and all night for months, only falling asleep from being so exhausted with grief. I wrote him letters. I wrote his family and his daughters, apologizing for asking for their forgiveness. But due to fear that my life or sons would be jeopardized, I did not send. I am sorry. I cannot begin to fathom any of their grief and sadness. Please forgive me. Almost everything reminds me of him, seeing my stab wound especially every day especially. It truly reminds me that all I really did live through. George haunts me. He is everywhere. I believe because I do still love him, think of him, and miss his laugh the most. In my heart, I know he is with me and understands that this tragedy was not intentional. I hope everyone can, his family foremost. I didn't mean for this to happen. Please wholeheartedly know that, and always, I would never. Forgive me, George. Forgive me, Torres family. Forgive me, Judge Cranick. To the entire planet, please forgive me. I graciously and humbly ask for consideration, for forgiveness to be extended instead of judgment, for reconciliation and restoration for all of us to move forward. My apology is profuse and ceaseless. Allow me, please, to brush off the muck, wipe the blood off of my face, and fix the cuts in my skin. I ask for understanding in what really happened and for how long, for second chances, repentance, and redemption, to advocate for all domestic violence survivors, to help them overcome, heal, and still hope, always, to make their voices heard, to confidently walk with all of their scars on the outside and the inside, to help them not ever become a casualty of domestic violence as so many others, to stop the abuse and maltreatment before it's too late. There is always hope, and you can survive. In my soft-spoken conclusion, I ask this: would I be the darling mother, celebrated woman of the year, if it were I who died? How many daughters, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, nieces, and friends have been because they did? I am a survivor. Learn to do good, seek justice, rebuke oppressors, defend the fatherless, plead for the widow. Isaiah 1:17, all-encompassing, protect the abused.
Ms. Boone, is that the end of your written statement?
Yes,
Now, gathering your thoughts, did you want to make an oral statement?
I do.
All right, would you do that now?
Yes, please. My statement, my verbal statement, is primarily to the Torres family, to the judge, to his daughters. I know you all know who I really am, and that I did care for George, and that I do still love George. I know you know that we had very many good days, and I take offense to the statement of being said that this is just for a moment. Right now, with me here in the courtroom in front of you all, this is just for a moment. But the moments before that, in order for me to be here, is endless. It's everlasting. The scars that I have on the inside, my outside scars have healed, except for my stab wound. But this has changed me as a person to see things differently and to understand things differently and to not be weak and just try to protect yourself and forever, regardless of the time that I may receive from today. I forever will have this experience. I forever will have George Torres with me in my heart, in my mind, my body, and my soul. As he and I used to say that we were one soul split into two bodies. This is not just for a moment. It may be for everyone in this courtroom, but when I leave, this is forever. When you all leave, that this is forever. This is forever for everyone here and those who it matters to most. I am one of those who will experience this forever. I'm sorry. Words do not define my shame, and I don't know what else it is that I can say and convey to the Torres family how this happened. The ifs and whys and how really don't matter. It happened, and I'm sorry. Words cannot describe. And I hope that everyone can forgive me, the Torres family most of all, and his daughters, because I know what he meant to them. And I don't think that anybody ever understood what he meant to me and I to him. And I ask for forgiveness.
Ms. Boone, I have just one or two questions, if you don't mind. And you can speak on it if you want or not. But this is a unique case, and one of the reasons it's so unique is that you were in jail for 4.5 years prior to your trial. And I understand that when you were brought up as a child, that you did have some spirituality in your family, some church, some religion.
Always.
But I understand that you got away from that. Did you have a chance during the 4.5 years to look back at your spirituality?
Absolutely. You know, everyone supposes that this is one of the worst experiences of my life, and it's actually been one of my greatest. If I were not beaten to death, I was going to work myself to death on the outside, and I never had time to get back into my Bible and to pray and to be with the Lord. And I, being here incarcerated, have had time, of course, to get closer to God, to reacquaint myself to him and realize what it's all about. This is all temporary. And when I say temporary, I don't mean by being set free in jail or from prison or wherever else. It means being set free and temporary, meaning that you work for something higher, you work for God, that you strive for your crown to be placed upon your head by Jesus Christ by being said, "You have done well, my good and faithful servant." I've always tried to be a good and faithful servant. I was just a servant as opposed to doing all that I can when my family were alive and I was going through everything up to this point. I've become so much more closer to the Lord, and it's made me such a better person. And I hope that I am an example going forward of the Lord's light and can draw many people to me because of it.
Any follow-up, State?
No, I assumed that was the final word.
Thank you. She can return back to council's table. Anything else from your side of the ledger, Mr. Owens?
M for murderer. Scarlet letter. She's earned a scarlet letter. But she writes very well, very, very well. But is it fiction? I didn't hear any remorse there. And that was one of the state's arguments. You know, he says one of the reasons we did offer her a plea agreement of 15 years. But as a condition of that plea agreement, she was also asked to accept responsibility for what she did. She wouldn't do it. She never did it. Still hasn't done it. Because as you can see, she is blaming everybody. She's blaming George Torres. She's blaming George Torres's family. She's blaming the police. She's blaming social media, regular media that has villainized her. It's everybody's fault but hers. Well, the judge agreed. He agreed with that. And
No more witnesses, Judge, just arguments.
Okay. Anything else in rebuttal or just proceed to argument state? Just proceed to argument. Okay. All right. Once Ms. Booth's seated, you can proceed with your argument, either Mr. J or Mr. Cacciatore. Orally and in writing, Dr. Harper's report and testimony, the defendant's testimony, pre-sentencing investigation, the arguments of the state and the arguments of the defense. Court pronounces sentence as follows. Ms. Boone, court sentences you to life in the Department of Corrections with credit time served that Madam Clerk will provide to you momentarily. There are also court costs and costs of prosecution, which Madam Clerk will give you the totals of momentarily. Due to the court levying a life sentence, the court is inclined to liquidate those to a civil judgment unless I hear opposition from the state.
No opposition, Your Honor.
All right. Madam Clerk, if you could please give us the credit time served and the court costs, please.
4 years, 9 months, and 8 days, and the court costs are $418, a state prosecution fee of $100, a dirt fee of $50, and a fee of, oh, excuse me, you're not screwed up.
I'm right.
So the total would be $618.
All right, ma'am, the court costs and costs of prosecution are $618. Those will be liquidated to a civil judgment. You will be given credit time served of 4 years, 9 months, and 8 days. You will have 30 days from today to appeal the judgment and sentence in writing. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you. I'm going to have the courtroom deputy provide you the paperwork. Because you've been incarcerated for the last 58 some odd months, the court is going to declare that you are indigent in this matter. I cannot appoint the public defender to represent you as they are conflicted out. Similarly, I cannot appoint the regional conflict counsel to represent you for the same reasons.
And
The clerk will appoint.
without comment, like usually a judge will give a little bit of a speech about why he didn't, were the elements of downward departure met or not. He didn't say any of that, nothing. He just said, you are sentenced to life in prison. Life in prison with credit for time served, 4 years and 9 months. Plus a $618 civil judgment for the cost of prosecution and investigation and experts and things like that, which is really, she's getting off really cheap because that the defense probably paid thousands for all of that. In any case, Sarah Boone will be going to prison for life, which means 30 years. Yep. And then she'll be eligible for parole. So, hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, the like button, and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And I'll see you in the next video. Ashley Benefield is being sentenced today. Bye, everybody.